Alison was still alive. It felt like hours, but looking at her watch as she emerged from her blanket cocoon, she couldn't quite believe it had been only 30 minutes or so. She crawled, dripping sweat and soggy clothing, to the nearest window, stopping to drink a little from the bathtub and extinguish the few stray embers smouldering on the tile. She peered through the space where the window pane had been. Outside, the stillness seemed to be a trick, concealing what had gone before. But the sky was red-orange, and there was smoke on the air, clinging to the trees, the eaves, the roof, the veranda, and the gutters. The ground was covered in ashen debris. Ghost white, chalky black, dusty, mingled grey soot covered everything. The day was a little cooler now. No more than 95 as the sun crept low, a long way from its midday peak. Alison was alone, which didn't normally jar, but lying under the sill, staring up at the sky, the acrid smell of death and ash surrounding her, for once she allowed herself to be lonely. It was just a few seconds, and then she forgot to continue wallowing. The house was shrouded in smoke and had a few broken windows, but otherwise it was somehow all right. She moved slowly through the rooms, checking for damage. There was no power, no water in the taps, and where the fire had torn through the bush, the trees were stripped and blackened. No viable limbs remained. Outside, she knew there would be work to do. Fences and trees down, the driveway surely blocked, impassable. The screen door was hot to the touch, and an arm's length from the veranda the closest blackened trunk stood, barely upright. It would have to come down. Alison followed the sweep of the hill with her eyes. There was uncountable debris. Licking at the edge of the house, the fire front had suddenly moved around to the side and stormed off down the drive, lighting up one side of the unsealed road and leaving nothing but ash and black brittle splinters in its wake. On the other side, the trees were the same mottled green-brown of hot high summer, as though nothing had happened. She would have to wait for the state emergency service to come through and clear the drive before she'd be able to get the car out. That could take days, maybe longer, depending on the scale of the fire. The road was 1 kilometre away. She grabbed a bag and shoved a few things in it, checked her phone. No service. Time to go. On the dirt path, Alison sifted her way through the wreckage back to bitumen. It was quiet now. The usual sounds of the bush dampened by death. What little wildlife had been able to flee would not return in a hurry. She thought of the family of tawny frogmouths that had lived in that now blackened tree by the front door. Their delicate feathers and round amber-brown eyes, the curve of their sharp-edged beaks, and the sound of their calls, dragged up from their throats and percolated in the backs of their mouths. As she walked, Alison tried to reorder her mind. You're fine. But it was hard not to get stuck dwelling on how likely it was that some of her neighbours were not. Alison hadn't seen it coming. How would anyone have seen it coming? She tried to arrange the past 24 hours in her head, tried to remember the normal course of her day, the things that happened before this happened. Pull apart the edges and put them back together so what had happened made some sort of sense. Closed her eyes and in the sandy, soot-covered space of the drive sunk down onto her knees and let the memories roll over her. The hours before everything changed. Again. By mid-morning, the heat was up there, pushing 104 degrees before the clock hit 11. A hot wind racing up to 100 kilometres an hour, air forced around the state like a giant dryer, not a drop of moisture about, humidity as low as 2%, and even in Bayside Melbourne, where Alison had spent the night at a friend's, it felt as though her eyeballs might cook in her skull.